Hello. I am Cathy White, and today is the third day of August 2023. I'm going to be interviewing Cathy White and Victoria Hansen as part of the congregation's 150th anniversary celebration. Good morning.
Good morning.
We're going to start with some regular questions, and then from there we'll kind of diverge and cover a whole lot of wonderful things. Okay? What were really your first memories of First Congregational when you first came?
And I'm older, so I'll go first.
Okay.
I came here, my mother was visiting me on her birthday in Colorado Springs, and I grew up in a Congregational church back in Ohio, and she wanted to come to church. And I said, I was working at the YMCA, and I passed by this way a lot of times, but I had not been here yet. So that was my first time coming. Jerry Jordan was the minister, and my real memory is that there was a blurb in the bulletin about looking for handbell players, which I had never played, but I always admired when I saw them done. So because I'm a little bit on the shy side, it took me a couple months to make a phone call. But it happened to be a day on their rehearsing, and I was invited to come to the rehearsal, and then they were going to play the next Sunday in church, and I had two little notes that I played. And my biggest memory is that out of the congregation after we had played our piece, this woman came up to me kind of in tears and said, "Oh, that was so beautiful." And it was Ruth Koenigsamen, who played handbells in college, and that was the beginning of our friendship so that was back in like 1986, I think.
Okay, great.
Kind of a time.
So handbells. Good.
Handbells brought me.
And for you, Victoria?
Not nearly as dramatic, but I came in the fall of, it was 1989. Jim White had just started his ministry here, and I was married to Jim Clamp at the time, who was hired as the new choir director, and I think you had something to do with that.
That's right. I was the chair of the music committee at that time, and I was tasked with hiring an organist, which I felt like really I had no business doing, but we did, and it was Jim, and that's how we met.
Well, yeah, so can I just stop for a minute and say he wasn't hired as organist?
Oh, no. Oh, yeah, music director, sorry.
Yeah.
We also hired the organist, which was also not in my realm of, but yes,
There
the organist and the music director. Sorry.
All right.
You're right.
And when I got here, I had been raised in a different faith tradition, American Baptist. And American Baptists have, their wide range of a big spectrum of right to left, liberal to conservative. But I was really raised conservatively. And when I got here, I had been a divorced person, and I feeling shamed and all that. But now I was in this new marriage, and I came, and I was blown away with the grace and the love and the acceptance by everybody who was here. I planted in really
Terrific.
quickly.
That's terrific, and a great thing to say about the church in general, as well as the beautiful handbells. So Jim was, of course, the minister when you first came, but Jerry Jordan, the minister, Patti, when you first came. Okay. Now, we are asking that you share a memory from time you spent on a committee or a group or a team. Now, in the most recent history, we, of course, know all about the team and the communities and things of that nature. But what about at the very beginning? Handbells evidently was your team or your
Was that, and I remember Ted Lindeman calling him and asking me would I serve on the music committee?
Okay.
And the next thing I know, I'm the chair of the music committee, which is put me in the position when we needed both an organist and a music director. And I was a pretty young member of the church, and we've certainly come a long way with all those personnel kinds of decisions. I think we're handling those things in a different way, but
they threw you into the deep water. It sounds like.
It was kind of, but then that did put me in a good friendship with prior to Jim coming was Mary Dyer was the music director, and we became good friends. And really, she was the first one that directed the Madrigal, which then became a big collective history here.
Sure, yeah. And how about you, Victoria? Did you jump in on a committee?
No, not a committee, but I jumped into the choir right away.
Yeah.
And then it wasn't long, well, actually the very first fall, the Madrigal came up, and so we were like, oh, there's a Madrigal. We're doing that. So I was involved in that. And after that, I think the next thing I really was involved in was getting the youth to do some singing and a little bit of a choir. We already had Joyful Noise. Susan Holman had started a children's choir. And but I'm trying to think exactly the order. It probably doesn't matter. But what comes to mind are things like Godspell, where the core of that group were the confirmands.
Oh,
But we
Interesting.
we also did, for whatever reason, we had a bunch of guys once. So I said, well, let's do Joseph and the Amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat. And we did that. And so we called that little group, which was in and out, it wasn't a real stable group, but The Noise. Instead of Joyful Noise,
yes, the noise. Very interesting. I'd not known that at all. Very fun. Such a Broadway influence. That's wonderful.
Indeed.
But I have to say, Godspell was an intergenerational
Oh, yeah.
Adventure, and really was a key component to locking me in and saying, hey, let's do more of this.
Oh, that's terrific. That's terrific. That's wonderful. And your friends over the years, Patti, you mentioned Ruth Koenigsamen.
Yes.
Right away.
Yes.
Yeah, that's so nice.
Yes.
And who else? Early friends.
Oh, well, Mary, certainly, who in the music. I might, some of the older women in the church became real mentors. Jane Shaw comes to mind, where when we would talk about who we might like to be when we grow up, and Katharine Hepburn would be named, and I said I would like to grow up to be like Jane Shaw. She was a beautiful woman till she died at almost 90, but we were close. We
Nice.
were very good friends.
So they're the intergenerational influence in friends as well as in music.
Yeah.
How about friends for you, Victoria?
Well, Patti. Patti was one of my first friends. I loved that. And that's a good question. Ruth Koenigsamen came in pretty soon in that mix as well. And the choir people, I remember Matilda.
Matilda Smallwood?
Yes. And I'm getting hard pressed here for all the friendships. But the Lindemans. I have to mention that because my children and their children were really close in age, they started playing together, and that became something. And I remember, for example, New Year's Eve, while Ted was up on the mountain with Adaman, we'd have Cathy and the kids over and watch it off of our balcony and that sort of thing.
Yeah,
so
that's very nice. Yeah, that's great. What do you value most? This is the question. What do you value most about this church and this church community?
I will say that it really has been my family. I was here as a single person before I married Jim, and my family was far away. And I was so this church really did become my family.
Yeah.
And so therefore, we had funny things when Jim and I did marry. We sort of had a barren couples group, the dinner group that so Chuck and Ann Benson and Ruth and Frank Koenigsamen and Sally Douglas and Julia Nace were, all of us who were childless couples, and so those kinds of wonderful around food, around entertainment kind of things developed.
So more of a family feeling.
Really, it was my family. My family.
And how about you, Victoria?
Well, I've already mentioned just have this feeling of grace and openness and being accepted. And I want to say that I feel this church has impacted me in my faith, the progression of my faith. I didn't know there were other options other than the option I grew up in, which was a very evangelical, thinking, very inerrant Bible sort of an approach, and so I really gathered that kind of thing. And I also have said over the years that I feel that I lost my parents when they were pretty young. They were in their 70s. And I had so many women in this church who were my examples of how do you grow older? How do you stay involved? How do you really keep yourself vibrant and alive? And so I've been influenced by a lot of people, and Nancy Winslow comes to mind on that one. And if I could backtrack, one of my friends when I first got here was Jim White. Jim took Jim Clamp and I kind of under his wings, and we had so much fun.
We did.
Yeah, and it wasn't long before you guys were dating, I don't think. So in the early 90s. Yeah.
Well, the question coming up now is share with us one of your favorite memories. Perhaps that's true for you, Patty.
Well, sort of one probably a big moment, because and every generation was evolved, and maybe that's one of the things I've learned from Jim and his wonderful, certainly great sermon examples, and but was that when we did marry in this church, the conference minister at the time, Clyde Miller, advised that when a congregational minister married, they did it when the whole flock could be there. So it was on a Sunday morning, the first Sunday of Advent, and my memory is that we got married amongst 450 of our close friends and family, but we had invited the children. Sarah Weatherman was the Christian educator at the time, and she dismissed Sunday school so all the children could be a part of it. We announced that we were getting married in a children's message, and our jeweler had given us all these I Am Loved pins that we handed out to everybody, and beautiful memories like Victoria and Jim sang The Gift of Love, and Van Shaw sobbed, and we had communion and beautiful Vivaldi's concertos played for our
so a real
processions, and it was a beautiful, we came forward and sat in the pews, and not unlike a baptism happened, we came forward to do our vows, and so that it was huge, huge for this little farm
and to be
girl.
tied in with your church.
Yes,
it's amazing.
Right? Yeah.
And what about you, Victoria? Favorite memory? Favorite memory?
Oh my goodness. That's hard because there are so many. Let me choose just this most recent madrigal. Because we hadn't had a madrigal for 5 years, and we came back having not any idea whether we were really going to be able to pull this off or not. And I said if Patty would do it, I would do it, and so we took on leadership. And it was a challenge, but at the end, I said to everybody, it was like this giant defibrillator, just waking me up out of this, whatever COVID and other things in life were had put me into this non-creative, just go with the flow, survive, all that kind of thing, and then all of a sudden we make this. We kind of reinvented it, and it was
magical.
Yeah. Right. The magical church, huh?
The magical
and the Madrigal church.
Yeah.
Yeah. They also want to know what advice you would give the congregation as it moves forward into the next 150 years.
I'd say keep talking.
And the words that come to mind is be open. Be open. One of my favorite sayings is the only thing we know for certain is that things will change, and how we move with those changes and incorporate them, and how we incorporate ourselves, I think.
Yeah.
Which I have a sense that it's currently happening, that we're kind of reawakened into
that jolted
maybe
the church as well.
I think so. Yeah.
Little.
And the openness is what is always linked to your first memory, really.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Interesting. What else would you like to say about the Madrigal? I know that's been a large part of your time, and kind of.
Well, we did this first one that was done in a sort of somewhat of a potluck style. People were given recipes for all the dishes, and everybody.
So this is pre-1989.
Okay, so it's
1988.
Oh, 88. Okay.
And I was the chair of the music committee. Mary Dyer was our music director, and she borrowed costumes and the banners that we used, and had this idea about this menu was that you might make a roast beef, but everybody brought the food to the church. And how we ever did a second one is sometimes always surprising to me, because things didn't go well with the food. There was a French onion soup that did in the dishwasher, the cheese that kind of melted and I think broke down the dishwasher. People were crying in the kitchen. I was costumed, and Ruth and I were sort of greeters in the crowd of a family style setup. And anyway, it was really a long time, and before a meal the food would be served, and it was somewhere around 11 o'clock that the choir actually sang.
Oh my goodness.
Concert. And like I said, how we ever said, oh yeah, let's do this again. But
indeed you did.
But we did, and we hired a caterer, and we did it 2 nights, and it went a little more smoothly. And partly how I got involved was the second night, the caterer ran out of potatoes for the crowd of people, and I sort of nonchalantly said, well, I could do that good. I could run out of potatoes. And so then I began to be involved with creating the menu part of that, and the look of it, which I think is the gift that is in me that I give to this church, and love doing so, and feel like it's a calling to for all of us that bring our gifts, whatever they are. So presentation and the creativity around that kind of,
And now it has morphed into now every other year. Was it every year for a while?
For a long time it was, yes. And and we always had a head table of singers, and then this is what the big change was, that we put a singer amongst each of the dinner tables. And I think partly what the magic was, instead of you being an audience looking to the front, and maybe you could hear the dialogue and maybe you couldn't, but you'd hear the songs, but you really became a participant in the way that Victoria created some of that.
And it wasn't my idea.
But
I mean, really,
but
I think it was your idea.
Collectively, I had wanted to try it for a long time, and then we were trying to simplify. And if we didn't do all that staging, and because it took hours to create that part, so we were trying to simplify. But we did spend hours trying to figure out how to change it, and would it work or not. But the sing for your supper. Yeah. I mean, the energy that, and part of it could have been that we hadn't done it for so long. But I really do believe that you as a guest became a part of it all.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because that kind of mimics the way the church works. You first come as a guest,
right? And
right.
you're
and
and
then
you're
eventually
an onlooker.
You become part of it.
That's great, Cathy. A great way to do that.
Okay. Well, I think we'll leave it at there, unless you have something else you want to tell us.
Well, I don't know.
I don't know.
I didn't put in the fact that my kids were raised in this church and became, I think, fabulous human beings.
somewhat
being-
influenced by this church. Huh?
Absolutely. I think that coming into a church where the little ones were not hushed up and, marched out of the church service if they made noise. And we had stories of, kids escaping from the nursery and coming in and going underneath the communion table and all of that. And
So
they
very,
were loved
very
and
child friendly as
accepted.
well.
It was,
Yeah.
and so I really appreciated all of those things. It made me a lot less uptight, and more like I am with my people. I found my people.
Yeah. Yeah.
And tag teaming on that a little bit is, for myself, the friendships that and Jan Erickson and Sarah come to mind, and even with you and your daughters, and with Melissa and Victoria, but Siri and Annalise, and there's all these people that became really good friends, but their children seem to, and even Sarah Weatherman's daughters would come and want to do a sleepover, but when I was still single, and we'd go sledding down this tiny hill near my house, but it's one of the biggest gifts that I think I've lived through the 30 some years now that I've been a
gift of the
member,
children.
is that the friendships with both parents and the watching
Yeah.
these children, and that they're Lynn Young and Meg,
Yeah,
all
yeah.
these, there's
So
probably
that
many more I'm missing,
intergenerational.
but lovely influence in my life, and I feel
And
like,
yours and theirs.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. It's mutual, as they say.
Yeah.
as they say.
Yeah.
But it's been
Thank you so
wonderful.
much.
Thank you.
Thank you.